start recording. Um, and I figure people will kind of trickle in as they go. I also did not complete my fruit cup, so I will still be eating my fruit cup. It also has chia seeds in it, so
For
Oh,
good health.
for health, yeah. Um, Chia is filling. It, it's like a lot of people use it as like a weight loss thing. Like you can eat chia seeds and it feels like you ate more food than you actually did. So unless I spill that all over my keyboard, I'm gonna eat it. Um, so I thought I think every class this semester is going to start off with me being like, "How's everybody doing?" So, anything new? Everybody kind of getting. Hopefully, everybody's kind of getting stabilized and getting your computer set up, getting your software working. So, anybody running into any major issues right now?
I'm actually still because I'm using an old, I don't know what year it is. I think it's maybe a 2010 iMac. But I think it seems like in order for me to be able to use remote PC, I'm gonna have to upgrade it, which requires
Yeah.
me to go get the original software installation discs from my parents' house. So I'm
Mm,
still working on that, but hoping that I get it all sorted out.
okay. Um, if not, let me know. We can try to see if we can come up with some other alternatives for you. Um, I'm hearing very mixed reviews about. Okay. Oh, sorry, I just got a message. I'm hearing very mixed reviews about the remote PC thing. Mainly that it's very laggy. Anybody getting that with it? Anybody tried that?
I have not tried it, but I did try just looking at how to get a free version of Toon Boom, and they were like, "Give us your teacher's coordinates, human."
Okay.
It was a weird. Yeah, they were like, "We need your instructor's coordinates," and I'm like, "I don't know what they are. Are you wanting latitude and longitude?"
It's like, I guess I
And
could
east
tell you
or
for
the westerly wind is that blowing? Yeah.
yeah. I'm currently in my office. Like I don't know that. They may be needing information about the school's location or something to make sure, like to verify that it's a school. Mhm. That's weird. Has anybody else ran into to that issue or figured out that issue?
I've not attempted to download Toon Boom, so no.
Well, I went and checked it out. It was just like you have to basically appeal to Toon Boom and email them
Mm,
for them to give you the COVID-19 version of Toon Boom.
is the special COVID-19 version of Toon Boom just a month long trial version, or is it like for the rest of the semester like Adobe?
It's like 30 days.
no, it's an awful lot of work to go through for 30 days, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
Um,
I think that Toon Boom might have a problem in that it's not a big enough company. Like Adobe can afford to be free for. I mean, honestly, Adobe could afford to be free forever because Adobe is very rich. But I don't think that Toon Boom is big enough or powerful enough to be able to afford to be free for that long. You know?
yeah, yeah. That's why I was going to look real quick to see what the because there's a an academic license of Toon Boom as well. Um, and essentials right now, even if it's not the academic license, is 15 a month. Um, of course, they want to sell you the annual subscription. Um, Students. Let's see. Sorry. let's see. Toon Boom Harmony student pricing. Here it is. So if you're doing the student pricing, it looks like it's $6 a month for essentials and $17 for premium. I was trying to see if there was a way. Yeah. And so the only way to get the COVID-19 version is to kind of. So I'm trying to just do the math. Like if we have, if you could get that for 30 days, and then just buy like 1 month of Toon Boom for the remainder of the semester, that means like your total out of pocket is like $6, hopefully. That might be one method of doing it.
I might just do 2 months of $6. I just don't want to send a weird, strange email to them. I don't know.
Yeah, if there's something, if you need me to do anything though, let me know. But I the annoying part is like it's still just for 30 days, and you're like, come on, Toon Boom. Like, I feel like you can do better than that. But especially considering we're paying for a license for the school, we just can't get it to you.
I do have a question.
Yeah, Cap.
If we're using, like, say we go from the student version, from the enterprise version, will those still be able to, like, move over our different files that we've been working on? So I'm wondering how that'll affect it.
Yeah, I think the student version is basically just it's the full version. You just are getting a discount on it for being a student, and they would come after you if you tried to make money with it, basically. Okay. So as long as you're just using it for student work, that would be my thoughts. I haven't tried it, but my understanding is that they should all be sort of reverse compatible too. If you do something in premium, you should be able to take that to essentials. You just won't be able to access some of the premium features. Right? Yeah. And I'm thinking it seems like most people in this class are really just needing the essentials. Let me try to. Yeah, let me make a note to myself here. I may be able to send some people an email and appeal to them. That's not the right to-do list. I have 4 to-do lists. So let me see what I can do. See if that's something I hadn't thought about. Is just emailing them directly and being, hey, what you got? And like, because we're getting it through Studica. COVID coronavirus statement. Okay. Yeah. It looks like they're just linking to what everybody else says about their software. So I'll contact them and see if I can work anything out with them. But in the meantime, like we'll kind of sort of plan on moving forward. Like my thoughts are if like worst case scenario, hopefully you would only have to buy a month or so subscription to the lowest version of the student software. If that's still like kind of tight for you, like if you're just don't have that to afford on it, let me know and we'll get you a copy somehow. We had talked about that with the hard part is getting ETSU to like having the ability to buy it. Like ETSU doesn't necessarily just have like a credit card. You can, I mean, they have a card, but there's not certain things you can use it on. But I have a credit card, and I'll buy a couple of people in class a couple month license to finish up the class. So if it feels like that's going to be the only option, let me know. We'll make it happen. The other thing, so otherwise, how are y'all doing like hardware, software wise? I know last class some people were running into issues like, I know some people were having trouble with Word, like getting Word to work at home. Adobe is just a pain. Kat, I know, has been on the forefront of dealing with their BS. So have you made any new word on that, Kat, since we talked earlier?
I actually had an appointment just as soon as we finished up, so
Okay.
not yet. And then I came right to class, so I'm probably gonna call them. I don't know what their hours are, but I'll probably call them tomorrow morning.
Okay. Yeah, let me know how that goes if you find out any more news, because I think Dusty and Ramona in the other class are going to run into a very similar issue.
Okay.
Ramona's still on campus somewhere, so I think that helps with the licensing a little bit because it's still recognizing the
I didn't know
ET
Ramona's
issue.
still around.
I think so. Yeah. But I know Dusty's going to have some issues with it. I think you're probably the one that's in the tightest spot because you're going to need it from multiple classes. And some of them are just needing it just for either Adobe Animate or for Premiere. And I'm like, well, we can come up with a Premiere alternative.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll definitely talk to him tomorrow for sure. So.
Okay. Anything else anybody's running into? From what I've heard, DaVinci Resolve, the alternative to Premiere, is actually pretty solid. Todd posted, we have a sort of a chat going on with the faculty, and Todd mentioned that he was able to, edit some videos in it really quickly, and Todd hates anything video related. So that means it's easy because he doesn't want to do he just doesn't do video stuff very often, and so hopefully DaVinci Resolve is a good alternative if you don't want to fight with Adobe on some stuff.
I've used Adobe Resolve. I know Adobe Resolve. I've used DaVinci Resolve for a while. It's pretty good. It runs a little slow on not great computers, and for some reason, just recently, it started not wanting to export MP4s on my Windows 7 computer, but other than that, I can vouch for it being good.
Cool.
It's no Premiere, but it's not bad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the other thing, apparently I don't know if it's the Pro version or both versions, has Digital Fusion built into it, which is a node-based. It's like Nuke. That you can switch in and out, and that was actually one of the node-based softwares I learned when I was in college, which is actually a pretty good one for compositing and stuff. Something that came up with some people were having issues with Microsoft software like Word and Excel. You should have a subscription to that already, just with your ETSU login. But if you're having issues with it, there's always the option of just going with either OpenOffice or Google Docs or something like that. And now my fruit cup is complete. So, so there's a couple of different things there. Has anybody tried out either Adobe Animate or OpenTunes yet?
Nope.
Nope.
Yeah, I haven't. I'm tired.
I used Adobe. Not Adobe. Why do I keep saying things are Adobe that aren't? I used OpenTunes. It's it feels more like Windows Movie Maker than anything else.
Okay. All right, cool. I've been meaning to try it out, but everything's been wild.
Wait, no, hold on. I just realized. Sorry, I just realized something. No, I wasn't talking about Open Tunes. I was talking about Open Shot. The
Open
other,
shot.
the
Yeah,
yeah. Sorry. I haven't tried Open Tunes yet.
Gotcha. So, so a couple other things I wanted to kind of address. I know y'all are hopefully getting everything kind of lined up. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quick. It's going to, there we go. I'll minimize this. Let me find the thing I wanted to. That was, so I want to talk really quickly about a couple of things. One being, let's go to actually our class. So under content, again, I'm on the online class content. This is where I'm putting stuff. So I put the some 2D links. I'm also putting our class recording and links throughout here. For some reason, I didn't date that one, but that's where our last class recording was. I like where it happened to pause it.
Perfect.
And some of the links from previous things. Speaking of Silly Hat Day, my other class, we were trying to come up with something for Thursday, and we kind of stumbled across the idea of a show and tell day. So if you got anything you want to bring to next class period as like a quick show and tell, we can do something like that. So, and of course we'll have a little bit of a lecture involved as well. So within the table of contents, though, the real reason to hop in here is to look at our schedule, to kind of think about where we're at right now. We are here, week 11, on Tuesday, so today's the 31st. In terms of the homework, the discussion boards, I just want to reiterate, I don't remember if it was this class or the other class, just the way that this is working, which is you put your initial post in by Thursday, and then all of the comments have to be in by Sunday. Just a reminder of that, because I think there were, in one of the classes, some people, it seemed like, were waiting like almost until Sunday to put in their initial post. That means you don't really get any time to get feedback on that. And so, try to, that's how this week will be as well. Your initial post will be due Thursday, so that's when you'll post like a blocking pass. I recognize that you're probably not going to be too far along in your blocking yet, but hopefully you'll have some blocking done at that point. And I have to move this over here because I keep looking to that side of the screen if I don't. So hopefully you'll have at least something done blocking wise at that point. And it's just another point to get some feedback for some people. So hopefully, maybe some keyframes. Maybe you're even further along than that. The biggest reason to look at this, though, is to sort of recognize how much time we have left to get this project done, right? So we have literally 1, 2, 3. We're around 3 weeks, a little bit more than 3 weeks to, well, almost 4 weeks, I guess, to get the project done. So, as much as that sounds like a reasonable amount of time, this is a pretty hard project. So, I would say to it's last week. I don't know about you all, but I got absolutely nothing, like in terms of like work done. Right? It was all like house cleaning stuff. It was getting the software to work, getting my computer set up, literally cleaning my house so I can roll around to different parts of the office, changing schedules and stuff like that. Hopefully all of that is getting close to done. If not, what I would say is sort of prioritize getting some of that stuff finished so we can get started on the actual producing part of this semester. I also feel like it's probably a reasonable conversation to have about sort of how to how to stay motivated or how to get into like your work groove, I guess. Is anybody fighting with that right now? Like, I recognize that Animal Crossing is a distraction for a lot of people.
I was gonna say, it's like, if I'm being perfectly honest, Animal Crossing has been pretty much what
Mhm.
I've been throwing most of my waking time into, because it's, cute and adorable and makes me forget about all the other things going on in the world. So yeah, I could use a little help.
Yeah.
I wish I could. I've spent every day since Thursday either in a car or moving boxes
Oh goodness.
because we had to move my brother out from Coastal on Friday and move me out from ETSU on Saturday, and then Sunday and yesterday were all spent getting that crap out of the house,
Yeah.
like, and all
Yay.
set up.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think what you're going to run into if you haven't already is the sort of the difficulty of self motivation. Um, and maybe that's one of the takeaways for this semester. Maybe that's one of the positive things you get is to learn how to do that. And it's not easy. It's not a this is not a criticism if you are struggling with that. Everybody across the world right now is dealing with a portion of that. I mean, there's the obvious of it's a distracting time, right? There's a lot of stuff going on in the world that makes it hard for you to focus on something that seems kind of uh, irrelevant, right? Like, why should I worry about making this crazy animation? There's a pandemic going on, right? I think that there's a acknowledging that that's hard is important. Coming up with some tools for you to learn how to deal with that, or learn how to still be productive in your class and make sure that this doesn't negatively impact it in any way is a pretty important part of this as well. We'll get to some ideas for those here in a second, but I do have some because I have struggled with that myself. I've probably told you all before that in the past I worked remotely quite a bit, and for a long time that was my only job, was a remote artist for a company out of Asheville, and so there's a lot of little tools that you can utilize for that. Something you all may have seen, and we'll talk about some of those here in just a second. Something you all may have seen is the announcement that came out about the pass-fail option. Anybody see that?
Yep.
I saw that.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, I don't know enough of the details about that yet to be able to answer a lot of questions. I knew about it as of Friday, that it was being considered up the chain, and they fast tracked it because it was something that a lot of students were concerned about. They quickly wrote up a proposal for it, and it had to go all the way up through I think it had to go all the way to TBR, but I may be wrong there. So my understanding of how that would work is that you elect to receive either a pass-fail grade or a letter grade. And I think that the date they said was by June 15th, which means you could do it after you get your grades. I am not involved in that, though. Basically what happens is I grade your work the same way. Everybody gets a letter grade from me. And if you are one of the ones who elected to do pass-fail, the university will take whatever that letter grade is that I've assigned at the end of the semester and convert that on your transcript to pass-fail. I don't know what that means in terms of GPA. Somebody said, which I don't quote me on this, or I'm not for sure that this is accurate, that a pass doesn't affect your GPA, but a fail does. So I don't know that a pass raises your GPA either. Again, I don't know what it does, and that's that would be the question that I think I would have if I were you. Like, is it a pass is a 4.0 and a fail is a 0? because that's a pretty impactful number, or is it a fail is a 0 that is added to the cumulative credit hour GPA factoring, but a pass leaves it like is like not factoring in at all. So I'm not for sure, and either way, it is put into place, I think, so you have some choices on how this affects you, or how this affects your transcript and your GPA and stuff like that. And it makes sense. Like, this is, stressful time for people. Some people are being thrust into situations that make it much harder for them to be productive. Some people are, we literally have some students who have no access to internet. How do you pass a digital media class if you have no access to internet, right? And so this is trying to give them as many options as possible, I think. So I think in the letter it said to sort of talk about this with your advisor. I was going to email Deborah to see if she had sort of an overview she could give us about it, but I didn't get a chance to this morning, and I've been in class since like 11 something. So I guess more to come on that in the future. If you learn more about it, share it with everybody so we're kind of more informed. But I think that's one tool that they're giving people, because this is just a distracting time. It's hard to stay focused, and hard to do quite as well as you would have done had this just been a normal semester, right? I myself would like to give you as many tools as I can to help you also do well. And when it comes to that distraction thing, I think that's when there are tools that exist that can help. I think the distraction goes in two different ways. Where I used to work at home a lot, and the phrase that I used to say is working from home is the same thing as sleeping at work. You are it's either one of two ways. Like, I'm sitting at my computer and I can't get anything done because I'm just distracted by YouTube videos, or I'm distracted by the Switch, or I'm distracted by a book I want to read. I want to do something else that's not work because I'm in my home, right? And then the alternative to that is, or not the alternative, but the sort of the flip side of that coin is, you'll find that there are times where it feels like you can't turn off being a student. Like, you'll be watching a TV show, and because your computer is in the corner, you're constantly thinking, or constantly worrying about that project you're not working on, right? I would be watching a movie and hear the little ding of getting a new email, and I wouldn't be able to focus on the movie because I knew I needed to go answer that email and see what that was about. So I think there's several tools that I either used or sort of devised or learned about. Some works for different people, so I thought we'd talk about all of them, or a lot of them, and then if you have any ideas as well that help with that. I think one thing is sort of staying in as much of a routine as you can, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to keep having this class on a daily basis, or on a twice a week basis, is because that keeps you in a routine. Even if we just come in here and hang out and BS about Animal Crossing or whatever, you are going to class once a week or twice a week, right? And so that means you're waking up, you're having to set an alarm for it, or you're having to make sure you're at least in front of a computer at a certain time. I think anything you can do to keep that routine will probably be helpful. For me personally, like, if I just roll out of bed, even though my hair looks crazy, if I just roll out of bed and then come in here and plop down and try to get work done, I'm really not very productive. For me, I have to get up, I have to drink some coffee, I have to take a shower, and then put on some clothes and sit down and work, right? Even if it's still just new pajamas. Like, there's my sleep pajamas and there's my work pajamas. Putting on your work pajamas will put you in that mindset of like, all right, my hair is clean, I'm going to animate, right? So I would encourage you to try to do something like that too. Just that process of like getting ready as if you were going to go outside will put you in that mindset of like, okay, my day is starting, and it's kind of a delineated line between like I just woke up and I'm being productive, right? Other things for me is location. Like I am currently in my office. That's where my computer is. This is my work area. I mean, it's not all just ETSU work. I'm doing some remote work for clients, but I'm also doing like some stuff for our church because having church online is really difficult too. All of that happens here, right? And even though I have a laptop, none of that is happening on my couch. My couch is my rest place. My couch is like where we watch junk food TV. My office and my desk is where I get work done. And so even though I could be playing games on Steam or something like that, I'm trying to make this my workplace. And if I want to play games, I'll play it on the Switch or I'll play it somewhere on the couch, right? And that's a way of like, I mean, like if you have a room where you work, and that's the only thing you do in that room, which I know not everybody has that situation, keep that door closed, and when you're ready to work, open that door up. If you don't have that option, you can make versions of that, right? Like for example, an idea that my wife had that I actually tried for a little while, and it worked a little bit for me. I think it could work for other people really well, is to have literally an article of clothing that you wear when you work, right? Like a hat, like your work hat. Or like sometimes I do this. I put on headphones even when I'm not listening to music because then I'm in work mode, right? But yeah, if you have like a hat that's your work hat and you're like, you know, I use my computer for Netflix and I use it for work. When you put on that hat, you're going to be doing work. And then when you take that hat off, you're playing and you're not answering work emails. You're not doing school-related stuff. I think anything that you can do to draw a line between that, what that also does is it lets you see how much or how little you're working or focusing on school. And if you realize, I haven't put that hat on in 3 days, then you're like, oh, maybe I should put the hat on for a little while and get some stuff done, right? The other thing is, I haven't taken this hat off for 3 days. Like, go watch some TV. Like, this needs to be a balance between fun and, or not fun, but like enjoyable time and productive time. Right? I think the other thing that can be a distraction is other people, and I think that's I don't know if anybody's in that situation where like maybe the only place you have to work is in your living room next to like, you know, your brother or sister or something, and they think that you're just goofing off on the internet, so like they want to talk to you or they want to like, you know, scream and yell and run in a circle. Like letting other people know that when you are working, you're working, and that's important, is like you have to come up with some sort of tools for that as well. So these are just some of my ideas. You all may have other things that are working for you. Does anybody have any other ideas or tricks that you maybe are utilizing or have considered using that people may find helpful?
I had a suggestion today, setting up a scheduled time for when you're supposed to eat, because I'm a snacker, and that helps you plan out what you're doing between those meals.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's a
like,
good
this
idea.
time is lunchtime, this time is dinner time, and trying to hit those each day, and
Yeah.
then that'll help you schedule yourself out a little more.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I know the real. I ran into this a lot when I was when I graduated from my undergrad. I went back to my mom and dad's house and had no schedule at all. Like nothing was required of me at any point. and I would, even though I would sometimes set an alarm to try to wake up at a reasonable hour, I would just ignore it. Like I would hit snooze for 4 hours or something, and then the first week I was sleeping till 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then eventually I was sleeping till like 5 o'clock in the evening. Eventually, I made it all the way around the clock again to where I was waking up at 4 a.m. every day and being like, I'm ready to work. What's going on? It really is kind of important to. I mean, it's okay to sleep in a little bit, like finding that like balance of you slept a little bit late, but you're still going to get up in enough time to do something. Yeah, and so I like that idea of having like at least a loose schedule. You're going to eat lunch at noon every day, even if you're in a class. Like, prepare before your class to have your like snack that you can eat during class while you're there. Yeah.
Well, for me, it also doubles as a reward.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think all of these are good ideas. Hopefully, that you can find the ones that work for you. I think the other thing that is worth noting is people respond to trauma in different ways, right? And this is a kind of trauma, like you've lost like your normal, and some people dive into that as a distraction, right? They dive into their work, they block everything else off, they become hyper productive as a way of avoiding dealing with that. And other people are the other way around. Like they can't focus on their work because they're constantly engaged in thinking about the stuff going on. So I think that it's okay to acknowledge that this is this is hard on everybody. This is hard on you. This isn't something that would come naturally to anyone. It's something that's going to have to be a challenge of working through and figuring out how to get your productiveness back. If it's any help at all, it's going to end. Like this will eventually go away. Things will come back to normal, or at least the version of normal that the new world will be. Right? And I think I think that within a year this will be a memory of that time we went through the pandemic. Not it's not always going to be like this. You're not locked in your house forever. Right? This is something that we're just getting through, and so I hopefully that will help. Right? That'll help you be like, okay, I still have to think about how I'm going to someday get a job at Pixar. Right? I still have to think about how I'm going to get my foot in the door at this new studio that I want to work at. Right? And I think that will maybe help you focus in on that a little bit and work on it. Don't work yourself like into the ground though. Like if you're I block it out and focus in on my work. Still try to find time to play some Animal Crossing. So,
as somebody who hyper focuses and will work forever,
yeah.
The most important thing for me is to schedule downtime and off days.
Mm-hmm.
So I force myself to take a day off.
Yeah, absolutely. That is play is not bad. Play is actually mentally healthy. Like if you there's all these studies. If you remove people's options for playtime, for relaxing time, it doesn't take very long for them to start hallucinating. Like it's like you need that in your life. So you're not doing anything wrong by playing Animal Crossing. You just have to find the right balance of playing Animal Crossing and getting stuff done in your life. And so so absolutely, like make time for yourself to to just enjoy the things you enjoy. It's also creatively important. Like if you don't make time for that downtime, you're not actually as good at solving challenging problems. Like, you know how everybody says their best ideas come to them when they're in the shower? It's because you're relaxing. Like that's how your brain works. Is if you're too focused on something, you're only using a part of your brain that works that way. It's once you relax that the other part of your brain can say, "Hey, I came up with an idea you weren't thinking of," and so that's why like some companies have like parks in the front yard, so you can go take a walk around the pond, and suddenly you come up with a new idea. Um, yeah, so hopefully that's helpful. If you have any other ideas, share them. I think something else that occurred to me is a lot of you are a little bit more social by nature than others, and some people may get work done better in groups. Right? You may like if you're one of the people who are like, hey, I'm gonna get a bunch of friends together. I'm gonna go over to the DMC and work for a while. Go ahead and do that too. Like Zoom is actually, you can get a free Zoom account and have like a 40-minute meeting or whatever, or you can use that Jitsi, or is that what it's called, Jitsi, JITSI, as a free meeting. Just get a couple of your friends together in that meeting and just have that open in the corner while you're all working together. And be like, hey, let's work tonight from 5 to 8, and just have that little meeting going on so you have people you can chat with while you're doing that. And some people are not. Some people would rather work, quietly by themselves, and that's fine too. So, any other comments or questions on any of this? Ideas? I have I can't see. I have a Miles Morales. He's my friend.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I like him. I found it, and we're still unpacking. We moved in May, and we're still unpacking. And I found a box that still had some of my desk toys, and the games that I've worked on. I keep them on a shelf up here. But anyway, okay. So if nobody else has anything else on this, I did actually have a lecture today that I was going to go over. I think this is helpful in that conversation sort of way too. But let me go ahead and get some files. I still have the old files open. My computer. No. Okay. All right. So before we move on to the next thing, anybody have any other questions, comments on anything? Anything else you want to say? Okay, I have a question. So don't get mad at me, but what exactly is Animal Crossing?
It's a video game.
Well, I know,
It's
I know that.
Animal Crossing.
But what is it like? Because, so me and my wife have a Switch, and we play stuff, but I don't necessarily know. I've never played any of the old Animal Crossing, so I don't know what it is.
I got you, Greg. Animal Crossing is it's like a simulator where you walk around and you fish and you cut down trees and you dig up fossils, and you can build a museum exhibit out of all the things that you found, and interact with other villagers and be friends and stuff.
The most important and vital thing to understand about Animal Crossing, Greg, is that all of the characters are adorable little cartoon animals. That is the
Except
most
for
important
you.
part of the game.
You're a person. You yourself are a person, and you moved in the older games, you were starting out on your brand new life, first time on your own, and you move to a town, and you get to name it. And yeah, all your neighbors are animals. And the whole town, though, is also run by a raccoon named Tom Nook. And yeah, he's the one who actually is kind of like making things happen. But
Okay. Okay.
it's amazing.
So is the
should play
gameplay
it.
just like simulation though? Like you're just like
From what I understand, it's kind of like Minecraft without the mining part. You're just like
It's
walking
3D.
around exploring stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a little 3D game, and it's like you can build. When you move in, it's like in the older games, you would pick, like, they would have houses like pre-built, and you would pick one and move into it, and like there's a store, and yeah, you can like mess with the environment, and yeah, it's and if you're really into like collecting things,
Mhm.
it really appeals to that kind of person, because it's like they very much reward you for like collecting all of the things.
Basically, the game is what you do is you fish, you dig up fossils, you catch bugs, you do all this for money, and then you play dress up, and you make things look good, and you make your house look good. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
Greg, I'm posting some pictures of what the characters look like in the Discord.
Oh no, I've seen pictures nonstop of Animal Crossing stuff. I just didn't understand what the game was, like what the play gameplay was of it.
You've unleashed a big can of worms. You realize that,
I
right?
know.
You're
Okay.
not going to get
Greg, you
elected
realize
then today.
probably you and I are the only people in this chat who have not wasted so much time playing Animal Crossing.
Incorrect.
It's
I have
not.
not either.
It's not wasting though.
Well, yeah,
But I'm also,
wasting is the
it's
wrong
like
word for it, but you know what I mean.
invested
Invested.
time.
I've been
That's-
wasting what little time I have to waste on Halo.
I've been playing the game though since like, when did the first one? I think the first one came out in like 2002. So I've been playing. I've been like a pretty like religious player of Animal Crossing since then. So you know.
The Church of Animal Crossing. All right, that's cool. Okay, well, I mean, I may look into it. I don't know. I got a couple of games on Steam I want to play too, but I don't know. Because I need to really follow my own advice here and do more play. Like I'm not doing way more work than I need to be doing right now. All right, cool. Well, thanks. I will pass this along to my wife too as a reason to buy it. So. All right, I'm gonna go.
I will talk as long as you want about Animal Crossing. So if she needs any more convincing, just hit me up and I'll
Okay.
talk.
Well, I may have to. I may have to give y'all a yell soon here. Yeah, and by the way, the memes are cracking me up, man. Like this chain of like whatever happened here was like it just got really weird really quick, and I enjoyed it.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So let's see if I can minimize this down to a couple of this maybe. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to y'all have seen this animation before, right?
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit today about revisions. So this one is usually targeted toward people who are repeating the class, right? People who need to do a revision as one of the projects, and people who have already done some animation and want to go back and revise it. I like to give it where the entire class can sort of be in on it, because I think that it's one, we're going to look at a couple of tools today that I think are handy. But tool two, I think it's a mindset thing, because I think the problem with the way a lot of people think of as revision is they think of it as a band-aid for something they broke, right? If you're revising a piece, you're like, oh, I messed it up, and now I have to go fix it. So I have to try to doctor it in some way. I have to, put a band-aid on it. I have to give it I have to take the thing that is messed up, and like I used the example earlier as like a potato with like rotten spots in it, right? You have to try to cut out those rotten spots in the potato. So the problem with that idea is that's not necessarily what is meant by revision, right? A lot of times you're revising something simply because it wasn't what was needed, right? I've done plenty of projects before where I did a really good animation, but it wasn't the animation that was needed for that specific shot or that specific animation, right? This will happen in games. Maybe you did something that was actually like I've done this before where I've done an animation that was like I loved it, like it was one of my favorite animations, and I was like, this is going to end up being one of the animations in my demo reel, and the feedback was this animation needs to be simpler and less interesting, right? Because of it needs to happen faster. It needs to be simpler in the way that it triggers, and I had to take an animation I really liked and made it like less appealing, because the point of the revision, or the point of it, was that it had to fit the need of the project more, right? A good example of this in film is if you have a character who is going to do a very specific action, right? Take Mr. Burns, right? I'm looking at him right now. I used the excellent GIF earlier for something. Well, I mean, every animator who animates Mr. Burns, I'm sure, wants to make him do this, right? But if he does that every scene, then you're overusing that. And the director may be like, no, we're only going to use the excellent one time, and it has to be at this point in the story, right? And so you may do a version of the shot where you put the excellent in, and they're like, oh, you have to cut that out, and you have to do something completely different. That's revision, right? In y'all's case right now, maybe you're going through portfolio right now, and you're wanting to revise something, and the point of it is you need to have something that has a specific technique that you're showing better, right? So when you think of revision, you need to think of it as a part of the animation process, right? And just like any other part of the animation process, you need to be able to go into revision pretty fearlessly. One of the biggest hangups is when people approach something too cautiously, too delicately, and they're afraid to make big changes. They're afraid to make sort of these sweeping alterations, and the result is that the piece doesn't get any that much better, right? So I think the first thing you need to do is think of revisions as you are going to just go in there with a hatchet. You're not doing revisions with a scalpel. You're doing revisions with a hatchet, right? And so I'll go ahead and just sort of show you with this character. Sorry, I have a set of tools that is really handy for me, which is this thing here. It lets me create this all button that I can select everything with. So when we're talking about revisions, it may literally be something like that. Let's use this as an example. This jump right here, right up into the tree. The revision may be like, your art director may say, I don't want her to run up the tree. I want her to jump up in the air and land on the tree and sort of squash into that and then do a jump flip, right? And so that means everything from pretty much frame 17 to about frame 41 is wrong, right? That's not what is needed. So when I say you have to be fearless about it, what I'm saying is you need to be completely comfortable saying, okay, I'll keep frame 41. I'll go to everything selected on frame 41, hit S. I'll go to frame 18, hit S, and I am absolutely fine deleting everything in between, right? By doing this, I know, because I did the animation before, I know I can make this happen in a good way. I can make this animation work, right? And if you are cautious about how you approach it, if you're not willing to just wipe out something and just completely redo it, completely make large changes to something, the alternative to that is this really small pecking you will do at it, right? I'm like, oh, maybe if I wiggle the arm a little bit, or maybe if I change the angle of the head, and that means you'll put hours and hours and hours of work into it, and it's not going to get significantly better. The problem with this is not, this is not a coat of paint this needs. This is a broken level of the foundation, right? And the only way to fix that is to strip it back down to the foundation. And so if I need my character to go from here to here as another jump, well, then I know how to do that. I just start setting keyframes on everything, right? I select everything. I got a keyframe there. And so I'll just move my character over. Which foot is she coming off of? She's coming off the other foot. So that means this one goes up in the air a little bit. This one's pushing off the ground, something like this. Adjust the arm angle. So I am able to completely make new keyframes and basically reblock in this part of my animation, right? And so now I have from there to there to there. So that means I need some sort of like contact pose right through here where she's still up in the air. Maybe she's doing a little bit of something like this, right? Got this foot here, this foot here. Getting her really ready to land. So get this push up there and there. Right. So I can start just reworking that range to make it what I want it to be. Right. This is so much easier than what I think a lot of people do with revision, which is this. Like, I'm going to go in here and maybe slightly change this keyframe right here and make it just a little bit. Like, that is not a revision, that is polish, right? A revision usually implies that there's something that needs to be changed in it. And to make that change, the easiest and, believe it or not, the fastest way to do that is to go all the way back down to the foundation of it and sort of like strip it out, get the foundation, the bones of what this piece used to be, and start working on it again from that point. I'm going to undo a bunch of this before I deleted all those keys, because the really cool part about that is even after I did all that and started reposing all of this, I didn't lose anything, right? I'd saved this file a long time ago, and so I could always go back and reopen the file, like, flip 000 or 0041. Like, that file is not going anywhere. I can always save it as a new version. Sometimes it's not just one part that needs to be changed, though. Sometimes the revision notes it's just not working, right? The entire piece just needs to be completely revised. For some people, that means you almost start over from scratch, right? But that's not what it has to mean all the time, right? There's a lot of stuff working in here. But if there were just like, it just needs a major overhaul, what I can do is save the parts that are working and take it back down again to the foundation of the whole piece, which was the blocking pass, right? So one of the ways I could do that is I could say, I've selected all my controls. Frame 1, I know I want to keep it, so I'm just going to hit S to make sure there's a keyframe on everything on frame 1. Now I get this contact pose right here. I know I want to save that on frame 5. I can hit S, and then I can just go ahead and delete frame 4. Right? And so now I have that key pose in frame 5. Right? Maybe I want the key pose where the character is up in the air there on frame 12. I can key everything, and then I can delete everything in between frame 5 and 12. Right? And what I'm really doing is I'm just trying to get this back down to my key poses. So frame 15, save that, delete. Right? And so you're starting to see now my key poses. Right? So maybe there. Of course, delete that. And I can start getting this. Actually, that's probably my key pose is probably more there. Get this push off there, frame 23. And so you're going to start seeing that by doing this, I can get this back to the blocking stage. And what that means is I can go back through and refine these key poses. Right? If there's a strong, if it was a good idea, but the foundation was a little weak because some of the poses were not strong enough, this is how I can get back to my key poses. Right? Because otherwise, what I'm dealing with is this mess here. Right? If you look at my timeline, frames 66 through 92, there's a frame on every key for something. Right? What I really want to get back to is where there is a key on everything to define the key poses, right? And so I think that that's a pretty handy way of working, is to be able to get back to that pass. What you can do then is improve each of those key poses, and then break that down and start refining that again, right? Now, again, I feel like it's worth reiterating that this is not an issue of you made a mistake, you have to put a Band-Aid on it. This is not a fixing it thing. This is a pipeline thing. This is how, like, you're going to do this like once a week in a studio. Somebody's going to say, hey, that's not exactly what we needed, or hey, I need this to work differently, or hey, I had a different idea for that. And you have to be fine wiping out large portions of your work to turn it into the thing that is needed, right? And that's a hard one to get used to. Like, that's really hard to just be like, oh yeah, I worked really hard on this and I just hit delete, right, on the whole thing. Because it's not what was needed, what we needed for it. But that's just the way the process works. That's the way, that's the way development of anything works, right? And so I think it's worth getting that in your head, in the same way that if you were blocking this out the first time and you created a key pose that just wasn't working, you have to be comfortable saying, I can delete that key pose and make a new one. That's what's happening here. You have something that's not working. You have to trust your ability as an animator to be able to say, I can wipe this out, and the thing that I make in its place will be even better than the thing it was before, right? Once you sort of get that fearlessness of being able to wipe stuff out, then it's not that hard to make big changes in your animation that improve it. So we have this idea of being able to go back to blocking. I think that's really handy, because after with a little bit of hindsight, you can totally see what would make something stronger at the blocking phase. I'm going to undo all that again, just so I don't. I can always just reopen the file, but I also have the selection set that I've made here. So, so sometimes the changes you do need to make are just really small changes, right? And if that's the case, that's all right. You know, you can always just leave it in. Like here's a good example, how that foot is tucking in right there. That just doesn't look right to me. Like the frame before it is fine, the frame after it is fine. That frame there, that just needs to be a little bit more like something like this, right? In order to just get a better arc. Like some revisions are that. Some revisions are these small changes that that make it better. But I think the most important element of all of this is being able to be honest with yourself about what has to get better, right? And hopefully that's one of the reasons you're revising something that's a little bit older, is that you can look at it with a little bit of distance and be able to say, this is why that's not working. This is why this animation is not reading clearly. And once you're able to say that, then you can, like, instead of thinking about how you're going to fix it, just think about what's wrong with it first, right? And is it simply that it's not fun to look at? If it's not fun to look at, then that means or not entertaining to look at. That means that the key poses are probably just kind of weak, and you need to push those. If it's not telling the story correctly, if it's not something that somebody could understand, that means the key poses are probably weak, and maybe the acting isn't as strong, and you need to wipe out sections of it and improve that. Sometimes it is stuff like arcs, and sometimes it is stuff like timing. Timing is something that a lot of people need a revision pass on. And so some of you are probably pretty familiar with the retiming tool, or have at least seen it before. So I'll show you this really quick. If I go to Panels and Graph Editor, has anybody used the retiming tool before?
I think I've opened it.
Yeah. The problem with the retiming tool is it's a little slow with some rigs. So I'll show you really quick. I select all on this. And I want to make sure that all of the curves are selected. So I want to select the top one, and then I scroll all the way to the bottom, select the bottom one. And so that means every curve on this character rig is selected right now. The retiming tool is this thing here. So if I click it, what I can do is double click somewhere in my graph editor, and it's going to create this bar, right? This is the reason why a lot of people don't use it, is because when you have a really complicated rig, this part gets a little slow. But this bar is basically just going to allow me to slide my entire animation, right? So I can just make the entire thing happen later in time. If I double click again out here, I can make another bar, and this will allow me to scale my entire animation. Now it's actually cool. This has only been in this version of Maya. Watch what happens when I release. Watch what happens to all the keyframes. See how they all kind of shifted a little bit? That's because they're actually trying to align to the whole keyframes now. So I didn't have to do snap to get them to align anymore. So that's really cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So the thing about this is I can put as many of these little points in here as I want. So I can go in here and let's say this entire section of running up the tree to right here is a little too slow. Go kill that one. I can now speed that section up a little bit, right? So now the running up the tree part is faster. She can get up to there a little faster. But if I wanted her to like hold this hesitation a little bit longer, right, so now that I've gotten that one, I can kill that one, maybe put one there and there. I can stretch that back out. And so now she's going to get up to the top of that tree and anticipate a little bit longer before she does the flip. Right. The flip itself, maybe the slinging her arms from here to down here, that felt a little slow to me. So kill that, put one there and there. So like that. And so this is a really quick way to like do a whole timing pass on stuff, right? Like if I want her to hit the ground here, but hold that just a little bit longer before she starts coming up here. I could do that. And so get this like... So the retiming tool is really nice as a way to sort of retime your entire piece. Again, and then when I hit W, everything kind of goes back to normal. Again, the problem with the retiming tool is that there's a couple problems. One is if you're using a complex rig, sometimes it just doesn't work at all. Like you'll click the little yellow bar to try to slide it, and you'll move and everything will just freeze up, and you'll have to wait for like 15 seconds, and then it'll finally come back and nothing will have changed. And so sometimes it's just not usable. If that's the case, you can still, I mean, the retiming tool is relatively new, right? In the past, back in the Stone Age, we retimed everything in the timeline here, right? You could very easily grab, let's say I wanted this flip here to be a lot slower, right? I would just grab these things, slide them down, grab all of this, stretch it out, and unfortunately you do still have to do snap if you're doing it that way. And so we can retime it that way. Again, making these edits fearlessly, because recognize that everything I just did really went and screwed with my curves here. Right? None of these curves are clean anymore. I'm still going to have to go back in here, select some of these things, and reassess some of my graph editor stuff here. So here's a good example. Like, look at that curve. Like the way this curve here is looking, right? That's not particularly a nice, like, clean, like climbing up the hill or climbing up that tree curve. That may be intentional, just because I wanted her to slow down a little bit as she's going up. But let's pretend it's not. Like, you're going to find all sorts of spots through here where making these retiming adjustments really mess with your tangents, with your curves, with the way things are easing in and out. It's not cheating to have plugins and scripts that help you with stuff, okay? In fact, I have a whole bunch of them in here. You probably noticed like these, all of these little sliders up here and all these little buttons. I have a bunch of stuff up here. All of that stuff is fair game. Anything that helps you work faster or more efficiently. This is AnimBot, which is a really nice set of plugins. It's kind of expensive, but it's nice. And so I can just use those plugins to get like more ease to happen all through all of this. Instead of having to manually adjust every one of those curves, I can just get a gradual tapering off of the ease. If that is what I felt like was the problem with it. I think it's also important to recognize that even though I'm showing you all of this stuff in Maya, this all applies to 2D animation as well, right? It's very easy to do the same things in terms of timing. It just requires you to be kind of just fearless, and that you're going to say, I know I drew all of these frames, but I'm going to chop out these 25 drawings and redo that section because it will make it better to do it. And that's really what revision is about, is like being willing to make those big decisions. In the end, it's the quality, how well the piece reads, that is the most important thing. Right? Okay, so there's one more tool I wanted to show you all, and I'll show it to you in a couple of ways first. Let's do a new version of Maya here. So has anybody used animation layers before? By any chance?
I've been curious about them because they seem like they might be useful.
Yeah, they're very useful. So, but let's just show you what they can do. So let's create a box here. I'll do something like this, right? And I'm going to animate this box on my timeline here. I'm just going to hit S on frame 1. On frame 42, I'm just going to move it over to here, hit S. Right? So you usually won't see this. Actually, let's do a completely new scene. So this makes one. Oh, that's annoying. Okay, so let's do that again. Sorry. So I'll hit S. I'll go here frame 120. I'll hit S. Right. And so now I got this animation of this object just moving across, right? So by default, any animation that I do is on a base animation layer. Now we're not seeing any animation layers. Like we have our display layers, right, where we can hide things or turn things on. Animation layers work differently. Animation layers are layers of keyframes, right? Layers of motion. So to make that clear, when I'm setting keyframes, I'm setting keyframes on my translates, rotates, and scales, any of these channels, right? And I get this set of curves that is generated based off of those keyframes. What an animation layer does is it creates another set of curves to add on top of that. So as we see this, like my translate X is really the main thing moving, right? Is that it's, it's going from point A to point B, we get this changed. Some of these others are not really doing anything else, right? This is all the base layer of animation. Now, if I select this object and click this little button here to make a new layer, you'll see it looks like it makes 2 layers. But the base animation layer is the layer we already had animated, right? Animation layer 1 is a new layer that is on top of that, right? And so you'll see in my graph editor, my base animation curves are there, and my animation layer 1 curves currently don't exist yet, right? You'll notice if I go to base animation, you'll see my keyframe on frame 1 and 120. But if I go to animation layer, there's no keyframes on that layer. Now, if I scrub my timeline, what I see happening in my viewport is both of those layers, like the result of both of those layers. But right now, animation layer 1, let's call that the twirl layer. So that has nothing on it, right? So I can actually start setting keyframes on that. I can go ahead and hit S on there for the first one. And then let's say halfway through, I can rotate it, something like that, and hit S. And then move it on out to here. And I can rotate it again this way and hit S. And then I can go out to here and rotate it this way and hit S, right? And so now, this motion is a combination of both of those layers, right? If I were to frame this up, my twirl layer, I have nothing on some of these other channels, right? But what I do have is I have some rotation on my Z, right? Down here on my base animation layer, I have nothing on my rotation Z, but I have some motion on my translate X. Right? Now, if I did some keyframing on my translate X, right? Try this. Do something like that on the twirl layer, you'll see what I get is that it goes back and then still continues to go forward. So to kind of show you that, if I select both of these curves, the translate X on my base layer is this one that's progressively going forward, right? Or progressively going up. And then on my twist layer, it goes down and then goes back up and then flattens out, right? So think of this in terms of numbers, right? This is adding the numbers from this curve to the numbers from this curve to get what happens in my translate x, right? And so the results of it are a mix of those two curves, right? Now the cool part about animation layers, though, is they're completely non-destructive, because if I don't like anything I did on that twirl layer, I can delete it. Like, I can just right click on it and completely delete that layer. But instead of deleting it, what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to click this little crosshair here and mute it. And so now that original animation I had is still there on the base layer. This twist layer is just adding on top of it, right? So the results of what I'm seeing here are happening in the twist layer, not on the base layer, and they're as a combination between the twist layer and base layer. Is that making sense?
Yeah, so I'm thinking of like, I don't know, it's like a situation where it might be kind of helpful, like if you're animating a hand and it's like, you want to have a specific like movement with the fingers, but then it's like you're not sure about like the overall movement of like the hand itself, and you could use an animation layer maybe to like move the entire hand while like keeping the finger animation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it. So let me show you a couple of ways that I would use it, or a couple of ways I do use it. So back to our girl here, right? I want to select all of her controls, and this is the animation that is on her base layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer, right? And so that new layer is, let's go out here so we can see from just the perspective camera. So that new layer is a new set of animation curves that we just haven't created yet, right? So I'm going to go ahead and select animation layer 1. And so one of the things I could do is, like, if I just hit S right now, nothing has changed, right? So basically I'm just saying on frame 1, I don't want anything to be different on animation, or with the animation layer 1 turned on, than if it were turned off, right? It's not going to actually be adding anything or taking anything away in terms of poses. So let's do that. So I hit S. It takes it a couple seconds for it all to, because there's a lot of controls selected here. And there we go. So now I have that keyframe on frame 1 that's the same, right? That doesn't look right. What just happened there? That's not even possible. Okay. Let me fix this. I think Maya's having a bug, because that thing it just showed happening there isn't possible in the graph editor. Maybe I have too many versions of Maya open. This is number 3. Don't save. There we go. Yeah, I'll go ahead and close down Maya 2016 too. Okay, so Maya 2020. I'll just grab. Okay. Give it a second to load up my scripts. There they go. Okay, let's try this again. Anim. So I'm going to create a new animation layer with all the controls selected. Okay. And then we'll look at this from the perspective angle here. So if I just hit, I have to get a frame 1 for it. If I just hit S on animation layer 1, it's going to set a keyframe as if nothing has changed, right? So it's still going to be the same exact animation. And then what I can do is I can change parts of this animation, right? So for example, I'll give you a good example here. Let's say the point she leaves from here, right? She lands like right here, right? Let's say I wanted her to land in a different location. So what that means is like frame 58, 59, probably 58 needs to be different. So when I hit S, but frame 48 needs to be the same, right? So if I wanted her to land instead of here, let's say I wanted her to land like here, all I have to do is make a change to that keyframe, and now she's going to go even further, right? And what I could do is I could also have her go higher here. And so now what we get is that. Now obviously that doesn't work perfectly, but you get the idea of what it is that this allows us to change throughout the entire animation, right? So the other thing we could do is like change a keyframe, change lots of different keyframes, right? I could change the way she's jumping here and have her jump more forward instead of upward. Right? Have her do something a little bit more like this, and that way, instead of having her travel upward, I could have her travel more I don't know what I've duplicated there. That's messed up. So I could have her, jumping a little bit more like that, and landing further this way too. Right. So she's getting a little bit more of this like forward jump. Right. Again, all of this is stuff that I could try, and if it's not working, all I have to do is turn off that layer, because the animation should not have been changed at this point underneath that. And if none of that works, I can actually just select everything again and create a completely new layer where I can try some different stuff out. Right? Let's say, for example, I wanted her to completely start at a different starting point to run up to this tree. Right? I have everything selected. Instead of just setting a keyframe there, I can set a keyframe there. Right? But instead of it just being the same keyframe, I can just move her to a different position on on frame 1. Right? So the only thing I'm going to change is sort of the starting location of her on frame 1. And just move her over to here. So that just means there's just one keyframe on this new layer. And that means the entire animation is going to happen offset from that. Because again, what it's doing is it's taking the data from this layer above it and sort of adding that to the layer below it. And since I just shifted everything over to the side, or shifted those 3 controls over to the side, it's just going to add that to all the layers below it. Is that making sense? How this is working?
Yep.
Okay. So the cool thing about this, again, is this is non-destructive. I can always turn it off. The other cool thing about this is, let's say I liked this result. Let's say her baked out over to here was what I liked. I can also, I'll say delete this layer here. I can select these 2 layers, right-click, and merge them. And as long as Smart Bake is turned on, when I hit merge, what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and do the math to adjust all of these curves here. Right? So, give it a second. Just gotta. It's going to take a little while to bake all this out. This maybe was a mistake. Oh, anyway, it will do it. Eventually it'll bake all of this out to where all of the keyframes are on a single layer. I don't know why it's taking so long though. Anyway, in the meantime, while it's doing that, I'm going to show you some other examples of animations that I've done in layers that, so you can kind of see some of the ways that you could use to work with this. So I'm going to go to File, Open. It's still got to load the plugins. There we go. Perforce. So this is actually something I've done for a client. Let's use Alexander. So let me load him up here. And his materials don't load in exactly correctly, but I also don't know where my, there we go, there's my tools. So I will show you kind of what I have from perspective camera here. And then you'll see the animation layers. Now the interesting thing about him is he has a lot of animation layers. Actually he may not be the best one to show. Especially considering it's freezing up. Oh, it's probably freezing up because of this other one. There we go. So he's actually talking a little bit. Let's see if I have any body acting on him. File. You know what? Let's do a different one because I don't know if this guy has any body acting on him. Let's do Henry. Henry definitely does. So this was a lip sync piece, but the or lip sync character where the character is doing a lot of talking. The issue with this, and the materials are not correct on these are just proxy materials, so you can see where the facial features are. The issue with this project was I needed to do a lot of animation really quickly. So literally, I probably have somewhere between, I probably have somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes worth of animation on these characters. Probably closer to 5, I guess. 5 or 6 minutes. And so you got these scenes where, let's file, game exporter. Okay, let's do this one. All due respect. So where he's talking to you and he just makes these arm gestures and like head gestures and stuff like that. And so I'll let you sort of see the animation on this. So I think what he says here is, with all due respect, sir, that's just not possible. So animation layers were really important on this one, because if I mute everything that's in a layer, you'll see that what the base animation is an idle. Right? That's this character just idling. The body acting layer turns on some of these arm motions that he does. Right? And so if you look at the body acting layer, you'll see that I really only have a few keyframes on here. Let me unlock it, or you can see it. Where he's just making a couple of gestures here or there. I don't know what, yeah, there they are. Where he just makes like this little arms raised up, you know, the arms go down, the head nods, right? So that's all that's really happening on that layer. The lip sync layer is where all of the lip, these controls right here are at, right? And you'll see that all of that motion is happening there. I have another layer where I added some emotion to his mouth when I need it. In this case, he's not angry or anything like that, so I didn't do too much with this one. I don't know if any of the others do it or not. So that's what the mouth emote layer is. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's anything on that. And then the brows layer is just all of the eyebrow actions, which is pretty much just him sort of looking, squinting his eyebrows down. So they kind of go down here at the beginning, and then they kind of pop back up at the end and settle. So all of that stuff was done in multiple layers, and all of those layers combined together to get this final animation. A lot of times what I'll use animation layers for is to merge or to add in stuff like secondary action. So like if you have a character who has like a ponytail or fabric or something that needs to be animated on top of something, you may use it for facial features or to shift entire poses. Let's say if you have a character who's kicking something, right? You can use these animation layers to have that character kick higher on that kick instead of a lower kick, right? Another thing you can do, and this is really pretty handy, is I can shift a character's emotion, right? So we have this walk cycle. The character is just sort of walking sort of neutrally, right? If I grab everything and add a new animation layer here, there we go. And I'll call this walk emote. What I can do is I can set a keyframe on everything on frame 500. It's going to take it a second. Maybe. There we go. So, so I have a keyframe on frame 500, and that's the only thing I have on this emote, walk emote, right? And so what I could do is I could make changes to this pose. Do it. I don't know why it's doing that to me right now. It is not liking that. Okay, what is happening? Let me lock all these other layers. That does not make sense. That should be working. And it's doing something, you can tell, because it's messing it up. But okay, let's try this again. I wonder if I have to an object. Symmetry off. Is it working on his head? Yeah, it'll work on his head. Oh, I wonder if I actually have to... I feel like this is a Maya messing up sort of thing. Not actually... So yeah, so I'm able to raise his head up. This should be working here too. Huh. Okay. I don't know why I have to change it over here for it to stick. It's like a... Maybe if I change it in world. Yeah, that was weird. I have to change the rotate Z. I bet it's something to do with this rig that's causing that to happen, but I've never had that happen before. So I can get something like this. I can even like do something weird with his arms if I wanted to. And keep in mind, all I'm doing is changing one keyframe. And so now the entire walk cycle will be like that. Right? So we are able to just change that one keyframe as part of the layer, and now the entire walk cycle has that applied to it. Now I have to be careful with something like this because I really just set a keyframe on frame 500, and what you'll notice is that now all due respect also has that same key alteration, right? So one of the cool things about this though is let's say I kind of like this pose, but it's a little too much, right? Like I said, I can always mute it and turn it off, and then we just get back to our normal pose. But I also have this weight feature here, which means if I only want to use about half of that pose, I can. Right, so if I wanted to use something like this, now I get like halfway in between on that pose. Right? Don't worry too much about what this was doing with the head snapping back or the spine snapping back. I think that must be something going on in a plugin or this rig or something. So because it's never really done that before in previous versions, so I may just have something turned on that's not supposed to be doing that. So again, I can sort of turn that pose up and down as much as I want to get a range of that. And the cool part about that is it's also something that you can animate. So I can key the weight of this as well. On frame 500, I can have it set to a weight of 1, but by 548, I could key it down to 0. And so basically he'll go from this pose down to nothing. All right. So this is a really handy tool to be able to drastically change your animation without worrying too much about destroying your animation, because this is it's called non-destructive animation. I can very easily turn that entire layer off, and it's like I did nothing before. We're just back to the original base animation. So, all right. Anybody have any questions about any of this? Anything that I maybe didn't cover, or ideas that you have about how you could use this?
Sorry, this is a really stupid question.
No?
But how do you get to the animation layers thing again?
Oh, so it's in the channel box. There's the channel box and the layer editor. And so usually down here it just says display, but there's a tab right next to it that says anim. And that should open up your animation layers.
Okay. Alright.
Does that work?
Yeah, I think I got it.
So there's actually another way of doing animation layers too with the, I think it's called the time editor. Is that what it's called? Let me see. Windows animation editor, time editor. Is it this? that other version of Maya just crashed, I think. Let's try that again. Windows, animation editor, time editor. Oh, so if you ever open up a window and it opens off screen and you can't get it, you do Alt space M arrow, and that'll let you drag it in. So that was hiding on the other line. But this is another way you can do some animation layers and animation blending in here as well. It's a little bit more complicated, but it's a pretty nice tool to be able to do some stuff too. So, all right. Any other questions? Things you're curious about? Ideas?
Oh, I just had one other question about. So with the animation layers, I noticed that your keyframes were different colors. Is that like, can you assign different colors to each animation layer?
So
That helps you.
actually, what you're probably seeing there, you are seeing that, but it's not the animation layers that are doing that. It's actually it's like how these are yellow instead of red. So that's actually something you can. I think there's a way you can do that. So it's a convert to key or convert to breakdown, and then you can have there's a setting in your settings up here, settings preferences, that will allow you to change the color of your key ticks. But the reason I have so many of them that are either yellow or green, though, is because of some of these plugins I have, and they have this option to where you can colorize certain things in there. So I can make all of those green if I wanted to. I should be able to. I thought I could. It's actually not something I use very often, though. What this is doing is it's using yellow to show any keyframes that are generated using some of these sliders, and so but that's not something that's to do with animation layers. It's about the plugin that I'm using.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Cool. Other questions or comments, concerns? Chupacabras? Nope. All right. Let me go ahead and stop sharing the screen. So, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up then, and let you all enjoy the rest of the day. I did have a question. So, if on occasion I have a class that's right before this. If on occasion I needed to combine our two classes, is that something that you all could do? How many of you have a class before this and would not be able to make it to like an 11:15 class?
Starting at 11:15?
Yeah.
That I could do. I have a class that ends at 11:05.
Yeah. Does anybody have one that starts at 11:15? I have a class that ends at 11. Okay, yeah. That's what I was thinking. So, it's not that I always want to do that. It's that I have been thinking about this, and I mentioned this to my class before. Since not everybody has on-ground classes, I know some people may have a class that's like right before this, but you may not be meeting in person. I realized that this could be an opportunity to actually do some kind of cool stuff. One of which is I could consider trying to get us some guest speakers. So basically, a lot of my first class, the one that starts at 11:15, they have one of Professor Livingston's classes right now. And so that means that they can't stay for the later class. But if you all are, let's see, other than Tuesday, I have a recurring appointment, but I can always hop in a bit later. Yeah. So what I was thinking is maybe in the next few weeks, what I may do is try to find somebody who's actually an animator out in the industry somewhere who could say drop in at noon, and I'll just tell everybody, hey, this week we're all going to meet at noon, and we're going to talk with this person who's working at this studio. and that way I can just try to get some other animators in. My thoughts is this situation that we're in right now doesn't have to be all a detriment. Like it could be a bonus. This may be a way that we could get you some one-on-one time with some more people from the industry, considering most of those people are working from home right now too. Right? So really the big question was just to make sure that if you had to, you could show up early for the class if necessary. Is that a problem with anyone if we did that every now and then? It wouldn't be very often. It would probably just be 1 or 2 classes. Okay. If you can't make it for some reason, and you just don't want to talk about it right now, send me a message to let me know. The other class.
Greg, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Sorry.
Sorry, I have a question.
Okay.
How would you probably just said this, but my brain is somewhere else today. How would you send out info about, like, if there was a guest speaker or something? How would you send out that info?
I mean, I would probably just let you know the class before and possibly send it out as an email. So basically, Edge used to do these Skype chats with people from the industry, and most of the time when they would do those were just people that I just knew from LinkedIn or used to work with or something like that. And I would just get them a connection with them, and they would just do a Skype call. To me, I would still like to do some of those, like just general Skype calls. But at the same time, since this is a character animation class and I know a lot of character animators, I could just say, hey, would you just like to come visit my class and talk to them for an hour or so? And that might just be a little bonus way that we could get, instead of just a normal work day, it could be a work day with an animator from, Gearbox or somewhere like that, chatting with you. So I definitely think there's a couple of animators who work at High Res who may be interested. I work with Joel Finney at Giant Squid. I used to work with a guy at Gearbox, and I got plenty of people at Firaxis, and so I can just start asking around. But I really wanted to make sure everybody could do that before I sort of found out from those people. So.
I mean, I think I'm in a position where it's like if I had other appointments, I would probably just like cancel them because this sounds way more interesting and cool.
Okay. Well, if that's something y'all want to do, let me see what I can drum up, and I'll just kind of keep your eye on the emails, and I'll try to give you like a week's heads up. At the very least, I'll give you like a day or so heads up. So it probably won't be next class period. So. Okay, cool. Well, in that case, I am going to go ahead and let you all off here unless you have any more questions or concerns. All right. Me and Miles say goodbye. Bye.
Hi, Miles, and also Greg.
And also Greg. We're a pair. See y'all.
Bye.
Bye.